The emergency beacon of the Meridian research vessel Quantum Seeker pulsed steadily into the void, its crystalline arrays broadcasting on all known frequencies. Inside the dying ship, lead researcher Zyrain watched another rescue opportunity slip away as a Centaurian merchant vessel passed just within range of their distress signal, yet chose to maintain its course without responding. "They received our signal," communications specialist Lon reported, his bioluminescent markings dimming with disappointment. "Their systems acknowledged receipt. They simply chose not to respond." It was the seventh ship to ignore their calls in the past 30 days. The Quantum Seeker's revolutionary quantum drive had failed catastrophically during a routine research mission, leaving them stranded in an infrequently traveled sector of space. Their highly advanced systems, normally capable of miraculous feats of science, were now barely maintaining life support. "Update the log," Zyrain ordered, maintaining the precise documentation their species was known for. Day 47 of emergency status. Centaurian vessel detected at coordinates 227.45.89. Signal received but no response initiated. Remaining power reserves at 12.3%. Estimated survival time, 18 days. The crew of 12 Meridians continued their work with characteristic efficiency, despite knowing their chances of survival diminished with each passing day. Their silver-scaled skin had lost its usual luster, and their typically bright neural filaments had dulled to a faint glow, signs of the strain their bodies were under as life support systems gradually failed. Another Galactic Alliance patrol vessel approaching, Lon announced days later, a hint of hope creeping into his usually measured voice. The Alliance was known for its humanitarian mission. Surely they would respond. The patrol ship's lights were clearly visible through the observation dome as it passed within visual range. Close enough to see their deteriorating condition. Close enough to help. The entire crew watched in disbelief as it continued on its predetermined course without slowing. "They are gone," Engineering Chief Tyra reported unnecessarily, her neural filaments pulsing with controlled frustration. "Their sensors must have detected our condition. Our technology is failing in ways that violate numerous safety protocols. Perhaps they deemed us too hazardous to approach." Zyrain knew she was right. The Meridian's advanced technology was both their greatest achievement and, in this moment, their greatest liability. Few species would risk approaching a ship with an experimental quantum drive in critical failure. The radiation readings alone would trigger dozens of warning protocols. Days passed. Their calls continued unanswered as ship after ship detected their signal but chose to stay away. The crew maintained their discipline, recording every detail of their situation, determined that even if they perished, their data would serve future researchers. Power reserves at 8.1%, Tyra reported on day 52. Main life support failing. Switching to emergency systems only. The ship grew colder as they diverted power to essential systems. The once bright corridors dimmed to a ghostly glow. The crew gathered in the central research bay, combining their body heat for warmth as the temperature continued to drop. "I've detected something," Lon announced suddenly, his voice weak but professional. "A vessel approaching from sector 89.3. But..." He hesitated, checking his readings again. "It's unlike anything in our database. The technology is primitive." Through the observation dome, they watched a ship approach. It was ungainly by Meridian standards, its design seemingly haphazard, with visible external engines and what appeared to be manually operated maintenance systems. Their vessel's hull bore markings in a simple geometric script, EES Horizon. "They are broadcasting," Lon reported, surprise evident in his tone. "Using basic radio waves. The language is, they are human." The crew exchanged uncertain glances. Humans were known to the Meridians only through distant observation. A young species, barely spacefaring by galactic standards. Their technology was considered crude, their methods inefficient, their society chaotic and emotional. "They are requesting permission to assist," Lon continued, translating the simple transmission. They diverted from their original course to reach us. Traveled for 3 days at maximum speed when they detected our signal." Zyrain moved to their communication console, studying the approaching vessel with a mixture of scientific curiosity and desperate hope. 7 advanced civilizations had passed them by, leaving them to die in the void. Now, this species of primitive but determined beings had chosen to answer their call. Respond to them, Zyrain ordered, making a decision that would change not only their fate but the relationship between their species forever. Tell them we accept their assistance. As the human ship drew closer, its ungainly form became a symbol of something the Meridians had never expected to find in their moment of crisis: hope. The beings they had considered primitive had done what their advanced peers would not. They had chosen to help, despite the risks, despite the cost, despite their technological limitations. No one had answered their call. But then a human ship arrived. Captain Nora Hudson stood at the helm of the EES Horizon, studying the alien vessel through the main viewport. Its crystalline structure seemed to ripple with failing energy, like a jewel losing its light. Behind her, the bridge crew worked with focused intensity, their training kicking in despite the unprecedented situation. Radiation levels are off the charts, Chief Engineer Wei reported, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of his console. Whatever's powering that ship, it's not just failing, it's destabilizing at the quantum level. Life support status? Nora asked, keeping her voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. Lieutenant Reed, the ship's environmental specialist, shook his head. Their atmosphere is barely maintained. Temperature dropping rapidly. Whatever they are breathing in there, they've got maybe 48 hours left at best. Communications Officer Jackson called out, I'm receiving a new transmission. Their language is complex. The universal translator is struggling, but I'm getting something about quantum drive failure and toxic radiation zones. Nora processed this information quickly. A highly advanced ship with technology they barely understood was breaking down at the atomic level. Any rational captain would keep their distance. But that wasn't the human way. All hands, she announced shipwide, this is your captain. We're about to attempt first contact with an advanced species in crisis. Everything we do in the next few hours will be written in history books, assuming we survive to write them. I need your best work. The response was immediate, a chorus of "Aye, Captain," echoed through the ship. These were the moments they lived for, the chance to prove humanity's worth among the stars. First contact proved challenging. The Meridians' communication systems were sophisticated but failing, and their language relied heavily on mathematical concepts that the Horizon's computers struggled to translate. But human persistence paid off. We're establishing a basic understanding, Jackson reported after hours of work. They are called Meridians. Highly advanced species, specialized in quantum physics and biotechnology. They are actually expressing surprise that we came to help. Surprised? Why? Nora asked, though she had a suspicion. According to them, 7 other ships passed by. All more advanced than us. None stopped to help. A murmur of disbelief ran through the bridge crew. The idea of ignoring a distress call was alien to them, it went against everything they believed in. Well, Nora said grimly, let's show them how primitive humans handle a crisis. Wei, what are our options for stabilizing their ship? The chief engineer had been analyzing the Meridian vessel's schematics. Their quantum drive technology is way beyond us, Captain. But the principles of containment are universal. If we can get close enough, we might be able to establish a power transfer. It won't fix the underlying problem, but it could buy us time. The radiation would make docking impossible, Reed pointed out. Then we don't dock, Wei said, a gleam in his eye. We've got those new experimental magnetic tethers. They were designed for asteroid mining, but if we modify them. Nora nodded. Make it happen. Jackson, tell them our plan. And make it clear we're not taking no for an answer. The Meridians' response was a mixture of skepticism and what seemed like academic curiosity. The idea of using primitive magnetic tethers to stabilize their quantum systems apparently struck them as either brilliant or insane, the translation wasn't clear which. As the Horizon maneuvered into position, Nora watched the Meridian crew through the video feed they'd established. Their silvery, bioluminescent appearance was striking, but what caught her attention was their demeanor, precise, controlled, almost mechanical in their efficiency. Yet she could see something else in their movements now: hope. Tethers in position, Wei reported. Beginning power transfer, now. The effect was immediate. Arcs of energy danced between the ships as their Horizon's generators strained to provide emergency power to the alien vessel. The Meridian's failing systems began to stabilize, their light strengthening from a dim flicker to a steady glow. "It's working," Reed announced, "their life support is stabilizing. Temperature rising back to their normal range." Through their video feed, Nora watched the Meridian leader, Zyrain, they'd learned, approach their communication panel. The translation came through in fragments, but the meaning was clear: "Your methods are unorthodox. Potentially dangerous. But effective. We had not considered such a solution." "Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best," Nora replied. "Now, let's talk about getting your people to safety." The next few hours were a crash course in interspecies cooperation. The humans' practical, hands-on approach clashed with and ultimately complemented the Meridians' theoretical expertise. Where the Meridians saw impossibilities based on their advanced understanding of physics, the humans saw opportunities to try something new. "Your species," Zyrain observed during one of their planning sessions, "you operate on instinct and emotion as much as logic. We were taught this was a weakness. Perhaps we were wrong." Nora smiled. "Logic gets you far, but sometimes you need a little human stubbornness to get the job done. Speaking of which, we've got a crazy idea about how to get your people off that ship." As she outlined their evacuation plan, Nora couldn't help but feel pride in her crew, in humanity itself. They might not be the most advanced species in the galaxy, but today they were proving something important. Sometimes the measure of civilization isn't how advanced your technology is, but whether you're willing to stop and help when no one else will. The evacuation plan was unlike anything the Meridians had ever considered. As Chief Engineer Wei explained it to the gathered crew members of both ships via video link, even Captain Hudson could see the Meridians' neural filaments pulsing with what they'd learned to recognize as anxiety. "You want to modify your cargo hold into a radiation-shielded environment using mining equipment." Verlon translated for his fellow Meridians, their bioluminescence flickering with disbelief. "Exactly," Wei confirmed, displaying the rushed but detailed schematics. "We'll line the hold with our asteroid mining shields. They are designed to block radiation from unstable mineral deposits. Not as sophisticated as your technology, but sometimes brute force works better than elegance." The Meridian's engineering chief Tyra studied the plans, her silver-scaled features showing the first signs of what humans would call excitement. "The concept is primitive, but the underlying physics is sound. However, the power requirements." A violent shudder ran through both ships, interrupting her. The magnetic tethers strained as the quantum seeker's deteriorating drive core released another surge of unstable energy. "Status report." Hudson and Zyrain demanded simultaneously. "The quantum field is becoming increasingly unstable," Tyra reported, her usual calm demeanor cracking. "Their containment systems are failing faster than predicted. We have perhaps 6 hours before complete collapse." "Then we do this now," Hudson declared. "Wei, get that cargo hold ready. Jackson, coordinate with Verlon on evacuation protocols. Reed, work with their medical team on environmental controls. Move." The next few hours were a blur of activity. The humans worked with a controlled chaos that bewildered the Meridians, running on instinct, shouting suggestions across rooms, making split-second decisions that should have required hours of calculation. Wei's team transformed the Horizon's cargo hold with remarkable speed, their welding torches throwing sparks as they installed radiation shielding. The Meridians watched in fascination as the humans used simple tools and raw materials to create solutions their advanced computers hadn't even considered. "Your species," Zyrain observed to Hudson as they monitored the work, "you adapt so quickly. Without planning, without perfect information. How do you know it will work?" "We don't," Hudson admitted. "But sometimes you have to trust your gut and hope for the best. Trust your digestive system." The translation made Zyrane's confusion clear. Hudson laughed despite the tension. It means sometimes instinct and experience are better guides than pure logic. Another violent tremor rocked both ships. A warning klaxon blared through the quantum seeker's corridors. Quantum containment at critical levels, Tyra's voice came through urgently. The core is approaching cascade failure. Begin evacuation now. Hudson ordered. Ready or not, we're out of time. What followed was a lesson in cultural adaptation. The Meridians, used to precise, ordered procedures, found themselves forced to embrace human-style controlled chaos. The evacuation route between ships was a jerry-rigged combination of both species' technology, emergency pressure seals from the horizon mated to the quantum seeker's advanced airlocks through a series of improvised adapters. This defies 17 different safety protocols, Verlowen noted as he helped guide his fellow Meridians through their connection. Welcome to how humans do things, Jackson replied with a grim smile. Sometimes you have to break the rules to save lives. The Meridians' evacuation was methodical despite the urgency, their ingrained discipline holding even in crisis. Hudson watched through their video feed as Zyrane ensured his crew transferred their most critical research data, their cultural artifacts, their scientific discoveries. The core is going critical. Wei's voice cut through the chaos. We've got maybe 10 minutes before total collapse. Hudson keyed the emergency channel. Zyrane, we're out of time. You need to leave now. But the Meridian leader wasn't finished. He and Tyra were still in their ship's data core, desperately trying to preserve generations of scientific knowledge. Our research, our discoveries, we cannot let them be lost, Zyrane insisted. Hudson made a split-second decision. Wei, can you hook up a data transfer through the power tethers? That's crazy, Captain. The interference would. Can you do it? A pause. Maybe. It'll be corrupted, incomplete. Better than nothing. Do it. The next few minutes were a race against time. As the quantum seeker's core began its final collapse, humans and Meridians worked together in desperate harmony. Wei's jury-rigged data transfer pulled what it could from the alien ship's memory banks while the last of the Meridian crew evacuated. Zyrane was the last to cross, practically pulled through the airlock by Hudson herself as the connection began to break down. They watched together from the Horizon's observation deck as the quantum seeker's core finally failed, the beautiful crystalline ship dissolving in a spectacular quantum cascade. All that knowledge, Zyrane said softly, his neural filaments dim with grief. Generations of research. We got something, Wei reported, checking the data transfers. Maybe 30%. It's fragmented, but better than nothing, Zyrane finished, using the human phrase with what almost sounded like humor. You know, by all logical analysis, your plan should have failed. Your technology is too primitive, your methods too imprecise. But we're still here, Hudson said simply. Yes, Zyrane agreed, watching his ship's final dissolution. Perhaps there are times when logic must bow to gut feelings. As the Horizon's crew worked to make their guests comfortable, Hudson reflected on the day's events. They'd saved lives, yes, but they'd done something else too. They'd shown that humanity's place in the galaxy wouldn't be determined by the advancement of their technology, but by the strength of their spirit. The Horizon's mess hall had never seen a more unusual gathering. Humans and Meridians sat together, sharing a meal that the ship's synthesizers had worked overtime to make compatible with both species' biology. The Meridian silver scales caught the light as they studied their human hosts with growing fascination. Your ship's medical officer tells me something remarkable, Tyra said, addressing Chief Engineer Wei. You maintain your equipment through physical manipulation. Without quantum repair matrices. Wei grinned, holding up his calloused hands. You mean we fix things with these? Yeah, sometimes the best diagnostic tool is your own two hands. Want to see our engine room? The Meridian engine's neural filaments pulsed with what the humans now recognized as excitement. That would be most educational. In another corner, Communications Officer Jackson sat with Verlowen, both bent over a tablet displaying language patterns. Your mathematical basis for communication is incredibly precise, Jackson said, but it lacks flexibility for new concepts. While your language is chaotic but adaptable, Verlon replied. Like your species itself. It wasn't quite a compliment, but it wasn't quite a criticism either. Captain Hudson found Zyrane in the observation room, watching the stars streak by as the horizon carried them to the nearest Federation outpost. The Meridian leader's usual rigid posture had softened slightly over the past few days. Your crew continues to surprise us, Zyrane said as Hudson joined him. They seek knowledge not through careful observation and controlled experiments, but through, what did Engineer Wei call it? Getting their hands dirty. Hudson smiled. Sometimes you have to dive in to really understand something. Speaking of which, how are you doing with the data we managed to save? Zyrane's neural filaments dimmed slightly. The fragmentation is severe. Our quantum encryption methods were never meant to be transmitted through such basic systems. But, his filaments brightened again. Your engineer's suggestion to use audio frequencies as a carrier wave was unorthodox yet effective. We've recovered more than we initially thought possible. Wei has that effect on technology, Hudson said proudly. He says impossible just means no one's been stubborn enough to try yet. A very human philosophy, Zyrane observed. You know, we've had limited contact with your species before. Our research vessels observed Earth from a distance. Our analysis suggested you were too volatile, too emotional, too unpredictable to be worth engaging with. And now I wonder if we were measuring the wrong things. When those other ships passed us by, they made the logical choice. The risk assessment was clear, approaching a failing quantum drive was dangerous. But you humans. He turned to face Hudson directly. You chose to help not because it was logical, but because it was right. Their conversation was interrupted by excited voices from the engine room. They arrived to find Wei and Tyra surrounded by holographic diagrams, their different approaches to engineering creating something new. Captain, Wei called out, his eyes bright with excitement, you need to see this. Tyra's been showing me how their quantum field generators work, and I had this idea about our magnetic containment systems. What followed was a passionate explanation that mixed advanced quantum theory with practical engineering in ways neither species had considered before. The Meridian's precise understanding of quantum mechanics combined with human intuitive problem-solving was opening new possibilities. It's not just theoretical, Tyra added, her usual reserve forgotten in the excitement of discovery. With these modifications, your ships could generate protective fields far beyond your current capabilities. And our systems could benefit from your redundancies. She said the word as if it had just become part of her vocabulary. Similar scenes were playing out across the ship. In the medical bay, Dr. Martinez was comparing notes with the Meridian health specialist, finding surprising commonalities between human cellular regeneration and Meridian quantum healing. In the hydroponics lab, Lieutenant Reed and a Meridian botanist discovered their species had complementary approaches to sustainable food production. We're approaching a Federation outpost, Navigator Wilson announced over the ship's comm ETA 6 hours. The news brought a subtle shift to the atmosphere. Soon, the Meridians would transfer to a proper refugee facility, and the Horizon would continue its mission. But something had changed, boundaries between advanced and primitive, between logical and emotional, had begun to blur. Later that evening, Hudson found Zyrane recording a message in his temporary quarters. The Meridian noticed her presence and paused his work. A report to the Meridian High Council. Hudson asked. Yes. But not the kind they're expecting. Zyrane's neural filaments pulsed with determination. I'm recommending a complete reassessment of our policy toward human civilization. Your species has shown us something we didn't know we were missing, that there's wisdom in what we once dismissed as primitive, strength in what we saw as weakness. Hudson leaned against the doorframe. And what about the other advanced species? The ones who passed you by. Perhaps they too need to learn this lesson. In our pursuit of perfect logic and advanced technology, we forgot something fundamental, something your species somehow remembered. And what's that? That the true measure of advancement isn't in the sophistication of our tools, Zyrain said, his neural filaments glowing brightly, but in our willingness to use them to help others. 3 months after the rescue, the Federation outpost Centauri 7 hosted an unprecedented gathering. The station's Grand Assembly Hall was filled with representatives from both human and Meridian societies. Captain Hudson and her crew sat in the front row, watching as Zyrain addressed the assembled delegates. For generations, the Meridian leader began, his neural filaments pulsing with colors that reflected off the hall's crystalline walls. We measured civilization by technological advancement. We categorized species as primitive or advanced based on their scientific achievements. But recent events have forced us to confront a profound truth: we were using the wrong metrics entirely. The assembled dignitaries murmured as Zyrain's words were translated across multiple languages. In the audience, Chief Engineer Wei sat next to Tyra, both wearing medals newly created to honor their groundbreaking collaborative work. When our ship was failing, Zyrain continued, 7 advanced vessels passed us by. Their decision was logical, calculated, and by our old standards, correct. But it was also wrong. It took a species we had dismissed as primitive to teach us that true advancement cannot be measured in quantum frequencies or computational power, but in the willingness to help others despite the risk, despite the cost, despite the odds. Hudson felt a surge of pride as she looked at her crew. Their primitive ship had sparked a revolution in interstellar relations. The Horizon's cargo hold design, initially a desperate measure, had become the foundation for a new class of rescue vessels. The improvised data transfer system Wei and Tyra developed had evolved into a revolutionary communication protocol. Today, Zyrain announced, the Meridian High Council formally proposes an unprecedented partnership with Earth. Not because of political expediency or technological exchange, but because humanity has shown us something we had forgotten, that the heart of civilization lies not in its tools, but in its choices. The announcement triggered a wave of excitement through the hall. On stage, Federation officials began signing their historic accords that would change the relationship between humans and Meridians forever. But the real changes had already begun at a more personal level. In the station's research wing, human and Meridian scientists worked side by side, combining intuition with precision in ways that were producing breakthrough after breakthrough. Dr. Martinez's collaboration with Meridian healers had already led to treatments that merged quantum healing with human cellular regeneration. Verlon and Jackson's work on combining mathematical and emotional language components was revolutionizing interspecies communication. Did you ever imagine this? Hudson asked Wei during the reception that followed. When we first picked up that distress signal. Wei shook his head, watching as Tyra demonstrated a new engineering concept to a mixed group of human and Meridian students. Never. But you know what's really amazing? They are starting to make jokes. Bad ones, but still, jokes. It was true. The Meridians were changing, learning to balance their logical precision with something more human. And humans were learning too, tempering their intuitive leaps with Meridian methodical analysis. Later that evening, Hudson found Zyrain in the station's observation dome, watching Earth ships and Meridian vessels dock side by side. The other advanced species are watching, Zyrain said without turning. They are puzzled by our partnership with humanity. They cannot compute the benefits according to their traditional metrics. And what will you tell them? Hudson asked. I will tell them what your crew taught us, that sometimes the most advanced solution is not the most complex one. That progress without compassion is not progress at all. He turned to face her, his neural filaments glowing with what Hudson now recognized as friendship. That when no one else answered the call, a human ship arrived, and in doing so, answered for more than just a distress signal. The impact of that answer was still spreading. Across the galaxy, other species were beginning to reassess their definitions of advancement. The ships that had passed by the quantum seeker were now facing questions about their choices. Some were beginning to change their protocols, influenced by the human example. Your species has a saying, Zyrain continued. The rising tide lifts all boats. We are seeing this principle in action. Our partnership is encouraging others to reconsider their own policies on interspecies assistance. Hudson smiled. Sometimes it takes a reminder of our common humanity, or perhaps I should say our common sentience, to bring out the best in all of us. Below them in the station, human and Meridian crews prepared for the first joint mission, a dedicated rescue vessel combining the best of both species' technologies and philosophies. Its name, displayed proudly on their hull in both human and Meridian script, was New Dawn. "We were wrong about humanity," Zyrain said softly. "We thought your emotions made you weak, your instincts made you unreliable, your diversity made you inefficient. Now we understand, these are your greatest strengths. And we've learned from you too," Hudson replied. "Precision has its place. Logic and emotion, intuition and analysis, they are better together than apart." As they watched the New Dawn prepare for launch, Hudson reflected on how far they'd come. A simple distress call had led not just to a rescue, but to a transformation. The Meridians had gained something they didn't know they were missing, and humanity had proven its worth among the stars not through power or technology, but through compassion and courage. "You know what the best part is?" Hudson said, breaking the comfortable silence. "The next time someone sends out a call for help, they won't have to wait for a human ship. They'll have all of us, working together." Zyrain's neural filaments pulsed with agreement. "Indeed. And perhaps that is the true measure of civilization, not whether we can hear the call, but whether we choose to answer it." The New Dawn's engines ignited, its revolutionary hybrid drive combining human ingenuity with Meridian precision. As it moved away from the station, it carried with it more than just crew and technology. It carried the promise of a future where advanced and primitive ceased to be meaningful distinctions, replaced by a simpler measure, the willingness to help those in need. No one had answered their call. But then a human ship arrived. And in doing so, they answered the call of history itself, proving that sometimes the most advanced civilization is simply the one that stops to help.